Hey folks. So I wanted to go over something that we've started doing at DevSwarm that we call release stacking. It's how we organize our work so that we can deploy quickly without slowing anything down. And so what I'll cover is essentially what this strategy is. I'll compare it to some of the existing strategies that I've used throughout my career. And it is another variation on the flavors of, say, Git flow or trunk-based development. And so we'll go through each of these quickly, and then I'll walk through what makes release stacking a little bit different and how using AI and DevSwarm, it's a pretty tractable way to release your work. And yeah, I think you'll see there's a lot of value here. And so what we'll cover, so these things here, the trunk based, where every PR gets merged into main, and then you cut from the tip. Environment branching, where your long-lived branches are tied to your different environments. Git flow, which is about cutting a release branch to lock down scope and then releasing that. And then release stacking, which is a different way to model releases that really helps manage the immense amount of work that you can get done quickly. But first, who am I? I'm the CTO of DevSwarm. I've been shipping software for about 15 some years now. And I've used all these patterns on different projects for different clients, for different organizations of different sizes. And I've found that release stacking is the first time that I've felt like I can hit all the sweet spots that I've always wanted without compromising or maintaining an unreal amount of discipline that scales well with different sizes of organizations. And so one thing to call out that's really important is that the way that you ship software is frequently tightly coupled to how you organize your work and version control. Even if you don't have version control, that itself is going to change how you ship your software, right? And so generally speaking, one of the most important decisions a team can make is how they organize their branches, because it's really tightly coupled with how your software is going to get out into the wild. And it's not just code review, right? It's QA time, it's project acceptance. There's all these different steps in the process. And the patterns that teams choose or choose to change away from are frequently because of the needs of not software developers, of the other teams. That can inform how you change or set up your shipping patterns. And so I'll walk through now like the visualizations of some of these different patterns and how release stacking works. And then I'll show you what it looks like inside of DevSwarm and how you can make that work well. And so we have trunk based. And the idea there is that so each of these is a PR that gets reviewed and merged, right? And so you have your main branch, and then you've got your work going, and then you have a QA cycle. And then maybe QA finds something, but also you've got other work that you are doing right now, right? And so it doesn't feel good to have to pause work to keep your current release going quickly. Now, where this changes is that if your QA cycle is almost entirely automated and within 15 minutes you can cut something that is safe to deploy to production, then that's amazing. And that's the holy grail right there, right? So if you can get to that point, if your software and the application you're building is something that makes that possible, then that's awesome, right? Then yeah, you ship and there's no reason to have any complex branching strategy at all. You just go. And so we're all trying to get here. This is the ideal. But in practice, what I've found is that there are variables way outside the dev team's control frequently that make it so you can't really do that. And that can be like compliance teams that need to evaluate and do things, and they're on completely different timelines. And so, yeah, you don't want to slow down your development waiting for things. And so one answer to that is environment-based branching, where you cut a branch and then you promote it to the QA environment, and that means you have a QA branch. And the challenge here is that you find a fix in QA, and now you've got to back merge that fix back to dev, and that can have merge conflicts. And that's fine. That's kind of just normal rote stuff. But the challenge that can happen is that you promote it to stable. And so maybe this is the environment that's essentially the copy of prod, for example, and you find a problem there. So now you've got to back merge twice. And then there's a hot fix in prod, and you got to back merge here. And if you've got a system that automates this and it's 100% reliable, then that's awesome. That's great, right? The challenge can happen is that you find a problem in stable and QA found something else, and now you've got it, and you know you've been sitting on this really big refactor, and you're like, cool. The moment we cut to QA, I'm going to do my big refactor and get that in, and now dev is fundamentally different from QA in some meaningful way. Stuff gets hard here. This is where this pattern I've found is the one where I can actually see, I've actually seen teams just straight lose work because things just get too hard and you just want to reset to some baseline and it doesn't feel good. But this can make sense in certain teams and organizations and certain degrees of automation, right? But so I've used that in the past. And then there, of course, there's Git flow, and it's similar to trunk in that you do your work and then you cut a release branch. And in that release branch, you might, this is where you're going to try to fix things up and make it, nice and clean and stuff like that. And then you ship it, right? And that's great. That feels good. What's happened with AI is that if you want to be a team that is able to really ship work as fast as we can now, if you can work in parallel and now every dev, minimum is generating 3 to 5 times the amount of work they were before, and you're using AI to help you review, and ultimately you are delivering quality work at 2 to 3 times the speed that you were, which means that if you have a team of 3 devs, that's the output of 9 devs. If you got a team of 5, that's 15 devs. That's a lot of work that's being generated, right? And what that can mean is that at the end of the day, every release is like this massive thing that you're going to be shipping, and that's fine, except that the bigger your releases are, the more risk there is. And it really puts a lot of onus on your end-to-end testing and everything and compliance. And the bigger your releases are, the bigger the surface area to cover for changes in QA and review and stuff. And so we found like this is the model that we were using, right, for DevSwarm, but it just made it so that every release was just this massive thing, and it didn't feel good, right? Like we'd slow down. We would slow everything down just to be sure things were fine. And so that's what brought us to release stacking. And so the idea here is that you got main, you cut a release branch, and you do your work on the release branch directly. You're not doing work on main ever. Then off of the release branch, you make another release branch. And the idea here being is that whatever you want to release in this release, you work on it, but you will ahead of time cut these different release branches. And so this diagram shows us cutting them like later, but really it's like, let's just cut the next 3 or 4 release branches. And then when we're planning our work and everything else like that, we just tie all of our PRs to the release branch we think they'll land in. And once you ship the release for 1.0 here, right, we merge it back into main, which means that 1.1 automatically has all of 1.0's work. There is no back merge. And you can distribute the work amongst these different releases. Now, the reason this wasn't something that was tractable in the past, before AI, was that stacked PRs can get really confusing. Stacked branches, they just aren't intuitive. The UI and the tools that we've used, they're not really set up for it. It's only very recently we're starting to see that change. One challenge, of course, is that if you want to release something earlier, then you have to be careful because then you might drag in commits you don't mean to put into this release. And it's kind of rare because if you're able to release fast, what that means is that these smaller releases, you can pump them out, and it's a hard argument to say, like, can we just shove this in earlier? Like if you want to shove something in earlier, like it's a new thing, you just make another release branch between these and then reparent the bottom releases. And that's where AI and DevSwarm can help, right? That's usually the pain point, is rebasing or just changing which branch you're targeting, right? And so the value here is that by being able to set these stacked release branches up, you can distribute the work ahead of time so that all the releases stay manageably sized. And so you can release faster and control your change surface that way. In practice, our releases are still kind of big, and that's fine, but it's at least sane. Like we're not slowing down now. We're moving at full pace, and it feels great. So what's this look like in our tool though, right? So what's this look like in DevSwarm? If I show DevSwarm here, so actually I'll go through just kind of so this repo, so these are all repos, right? I got Scalp Together, my RFP scraper, got Hivekeeper, and then I got a few other ones here. So scalloped together here, this is what trunk-based would look like in DevSwarm. It's just main is the repo here, and then here's all my branches, and they're branched off each other doing things, right? And that's fine. The more git flowish sort of, like, actually, no, this isn't. This was our first iteration, which was, let's have just multiple releases going at once, and we'd organize our work by organizing it like this. The problem here is that, yeah, you'd merge in branches to 1.2 and 1.21. See, already I've got it kind of messed up here. 1.2 should be above up here, actually. So now you kind of got to keep track of where all the different merging and stuff is and happening here, right? So this doesn't work really great either. So in Hivekeeper, I've actually got release stacking set up properly here. And so so if I expand this, here's the work that I'm going to do for this release, right? And my coworkers, they'll have the same branch in their DevSwarm as well. So this is a workspace, and a workspace is tied to a Git branch and a folder so that everything can be worked on in parallel here. And so this is my release 0.9.1 that I'm going to be doing for Hivekeeper, right? And inside of this release, I've got the company setup, edit profile info, and upload user avatars, workspaces. So these are features I'm working on here. But inside of it, I've also got release 0.9.2. So once these guys merge up to their parent, like they get done, they get reviewed, which means that they will be merged into release 0.9.1. Then once 0.9.1 is released, it'll get merged into the main branch. So all released work is merged into the main branch. So that would mean that this gets merged into the main branch, which is for here would be Hivekeeper. And that means this disappears. And that would naturally make it so that release 0.9.2 is now going to be the most recent one. It is forced by the structure of the work itself, the structure of the branches. And if I expand this, then I have the feature I'm working on for 0.9.2, which is maybe a little bit bigger. Like, I don't think it's going to fit in here, right? We want to keep our releases small, because if they're small, then the QA surface is smaller, and the acceptance surface is smaller, and you can just belt stuff out. And if you can belt stuff out faster, that just feels better for everybody. Means that if there's a problem, rolling back or applying a patch is really fast too. So then I have release 0.10.1 here. 0 here, right? And so in here, I've got my Hive management. I'm going to create and update my hives, whatever that means. And then I've got release 0.11.0 here. And if I open that, I've got my changing queens. And this is, this looks a little bit crazy. But at the end of the day, the thing that's really nice is that where most of my focus is going to probably be is in this release here. And then as I go down and I expand, I can focus more and more on the other stuff here, right? And all of my work stays kind of focused and synced and set up. And if something doesn't work out where, the company setup isn't going to make it into this release, in DevSwarm, I can go here and I can say change my parent workspace and set it to 0.9.2. Now that will have implications on the changes. This is a crazy workspace. That's why these deltas are nuts. This is all for an example, but this is where AI helps, right? So DevSwarm helps because it's making this visualization and it's creating the different workspaces so that AI doesn't stomp on each other's toes when you're doing your work, right? AI can help here in that when you want to change the branch that you're targeting, change a base branch, right? There's a few different strategies you can do there, right? AI can help with that because that's usually one of the more painful operations you're going to do with Git. And so you just tell it like, hey, no, I want to change my base branch to this branch, and then work with AI to get that figured out. And in practice, because your releases are small, your work is small, you're releasing continuously, it's less painful. And it's easier to push stuff to future releases than it is to bring stuff up from more distant releases, right? And the most common case is going to be pushing stuff out because just something didn't quite fit. And because you can continuously release, it's not a big deal. And let's say that you're like, all right, I got another little thing that I want to get out. And so I'm going to go ahead and make a release 0.9.3. So that's just this. So I'm not going to make a task or anything like that, but I'll make the workspace. So here it is. I'm making this up. And now I'm like, all right, cool. That means that this is the one little bit of discipline that you would do is you change the parent release to this guy. And now your entire stack of releases and everything is now properly under this. That's the one piece of discipline you'd have. And that's actually pretty easy discipline, because even if these stayed siblings, getting this stuff merged back up, eventually you'll get there, right? There won't be the risk of losing work or whatnot. And so that's the strategy. And the reason this wasn't something you do before AI was just stacked PRs. There's not an interface that really helps with that, and changing the base branches and stuff. It would have been a full-time job for somebody, right? And then with DevSwarm, because we have this visualization where we actually model the branches, the branch structure of your workspaces as a first-class citizen, that means that you can visually understand in your work where everything's going to fall. And it's a really nice experience to see that. It makes it very straightforward to communicate with your team, straightforward to manage your work and everything, to make sure it all works nice. So mostly this is a sidebar exercise, because that's where this is. So when my team is going to release work, from here we cut GitHub release and do a bunch of stuff, and all that stuff gets out here. But in terms of how we model where changes go, this nested release structure has been really nice. That's been really powerful. And compared to all the other patterns I've used so far, it's the one that I haven't felt like I'm making a trade-off, or I've had to be particularly disciplined with the team and everything to make it all kind of like work. We all just kind of like agree that like, yeah, no, just naturally it follows that. It's like if you have semantic versioning, then it's easy to like, you can see where things fit, and then you just make it fit, and it works out really nice. So the other thing to call out too is that DevSwarm, the code base, our code base, it's not just a desktop app. We've got cloud components, we've got our web app, we operate as a monorepo. And so it's everything, right? And this strategy works really well for that, because having all of the work getting deployed at once, even though they're across different things, just as long as everything's on the same page as what version it is, that really helps, and being able to organize it like that. And the thing is, that's nice, is that even if we weren't a monorepo, right? Let's just say that you're working across several repos. For one, we have a feature coming up that's going to make that a lot easier. But let's just say that you've got several different repos and you're working across them. The strategy looks the same in DevSwarm no matter what your repo looks like if you were to adopt it, right? So if I were to just, change my parent workspace to release 1.21, we were to start adopting this strategy, oops, but see, I did that backwards. Should be the other way around. But you'll get the shape in. It still looks the same shape. It still makes it so that you can approach how you organize your work consistently across the teams and stuff, because once you see it, it's a visually understandable shape, and it's harder to get wrong, which is really nice. So yeah, that's it. I hope you found this helpful. I'd love to hear whether or not this, if this seems like something your team would want to adopt, definitely reach out to us if your team needs help kind of getting this stuff set up. But I'd love to hear if this ends up being something that other folks find as successful as we have, because this has been really nice for us. All right. Thank you for your time. Happy swarming.